Hello again, good people of the world. It's the Big Heavy, back with another desk setup video. And my previous desk setup video, which was something, I call it something like desk setups for people with a real job, was one of my surprise hit videos. Apparently I'm not the only working stiff out there that's trying to figure out how you set up an effective home office when you've got a real job. And by real job, I mean things like, you're on video conferences, you're jockeying spreadsheets, you're working through PowerPoints, you're writing, you're doing all the kind of boring office-y stuff. You're not sitting there professionally gaming, coding, producing content, all the cool stuff that a lot of the YouTube desk setup videos cover. You're grinding it out, you're getting it done, you're making things happen, you're working for the man or the woman and getting after it. And that's what I've been doing most of my career. I've spent the better part of my 20 plus years working from home in some capacity. I had my own company for about 7-8 years and set up very much like this, first in our apartment, then in our house, and now in this current house was not only my kind of day-to-day workplace serving clients and customers, but also my global world headquarters. My desk setup for my last video is out in a detached garage. I've got a video in progress where I'll talk about how I designed that space. I did most of the construction and build myself and some of the considerations I went through. But ultimately, one of the reasons I built that space and one of the reasons I spent a lot of time out there is I've got 3 kids. When I first started building that place and said, hey, I need to put an office in here, they were fairly young, they were home most of the day. And it's a little bit hard to take care of business and do video conferences and all that stuff when you've got kids running around and doing things that kids can and should be doing. So this was kind of my workspace when I started things out. Moved out to that detached garage. The HVAC recently failed, so I've been spending a lot more time in here, and the kids are in school most of the day, so that's a little more effective. But I wanted to show you this setup for a few reasons. Number one, it's another very practically designed space. Again, trying to do all those activities that somebody with a real job has to do on a day-to-day basis. It's focused on function in terms of the equipment I've selected, in terms of how it's set up. But this space is also my house. My other space is out in a detached garage. It's kind of my cave or whatever you want to call it. So that is targeted almost 100% towards function. This office is a little more targeted towards form. So this room is right by the front door of our home. It's 10 feet away from the kitchen and the living room and all that stuff. So when we have people over, this is an area they see. This is an area maybe people might wander into to have a conversation, or got a nice big old leather chair where people will sit and read a book. I'll often sit in there and read through work-related stuff or do a phone call or something like that. So this space needed to kind of look like a house more than just a totally functional office. And that drove some of my choices in the components I selected. So starting off with perhaps the most obvious is the desk itself. Now I've had this desk for about 15 years, I think. And if I were to redo things today, I probably would select something a little different. When I bought this desk, I wanted something that obviously looked like a piece of furniture. It's some kind of wood, probably the unfortunate modern press board or synthetic, wood type product with a nice veneer over it. And it's one of these modular desks. So there's this credenza that attaches to a couple bookshelf units. And I think they had like 4 or 5 different components that you could mix and match, and then they bolt together. So it allows you to have some optionality. I had this arranged a little differently at one point and then kind of changed it into this corner style. This little cabinet where my laptop and desktop sit used to be under there, and it kind of fits neatly in there. So it looks nice. There's a lot of storage space. I have it filled up with books and papers and all that stuff. And honestly, if I spent the time to clean everything out, I could probably get about half the stuff out of it. But it's pretty full as it stands, and there's plenty of space to put stuff in here, which is nice. Now, one of the things I don't like, I think it was originally designed so there's a computer workstation over here that had a little pull-out keyboard drawer. I moved the desktop over here so I'd have a little more room. But the challenge is it's got some drawers here and it's a little low. When I'm in my optimum sitting height, which is about where I'm at now, my knees sort of jam in here, and it's not terrible. I can kind of stretch my legs out and get under there and work away, but it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. So if I were to do this all over again, I would think of maybe having a credenza bookshelf style cabinet that, looked nice again. And I would probably go with a standing desk. I'd go with something maybe a little nicer than what I had out in the other room. I'd probably use the uplift desk stuff, just because it was fine, seemed to work well, but maybe in a little different color scheme, so it was a little more subtle. And I definitely do a nicer top. I do some kind of reclaimed walnut or chestnut, or something that was a little more of a furniture grade top versus the bamboo that I have in my other office. I think if you chose carefully, you could match the top so it looked like it went with as a set with some of the other components. There may be some company out there right now that's making a set with a standing desk that's kind of integrated with other furniture type components. But you get something that looked nice, looked appropriate for a home office, but also gave you the benefits of a standing desk. Some of the other furniture type components, one that I really like that's a fairly recent addition is I've got this little riser for the monitor, and I can't remember where I got it from. I'll put a link down below. None of the stuff I'm going to show you is sponsored or given for free. It's all kind of things I researched and ended up picking what was right for me. But what I like about this is it primarily does two things for me. First of all, it puts my monitor at a little better height. You generally want the center of your monitor to be at about eye level, so you're kind of naturally looking right in the center versus having to tilt your neck up or look down into something. That's why you generally don't want to work at laptops for an extended period of time. You end up with that little hunch for most of the time. So this guy gets my monitor at a good height, and he also gives me a surprising amount of additional real estate. So there's this little kind of garage area under the monitor. I can put my stapler in there. I can put my tape, kind of those things that you want to have close at hand, but don't necessarily want cluttering things up. Another weird thing I keep in there that people scoff at, but it's actually surprisingly useful, is a gigantic calculator. If you're putting together a presentation where you're copying a bunch of figures from an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, I'll bang through and kind of double check the numbers and make sure I didn't goof something up. I like it when I'm paying bills at home. You can run through and sum things up very quickly. When I'm doing invoices for my article writing business, I'll just kind of double check my numbers and bang things out. Just having something big with big old buttons makes life easier. I'll put a link to this since, oddly enough, I spent way more time than I should have researching large calculators. I'll also tuck things under there like headphones, so I can throw those on if I'm going on a call and kind of keep them out of the way when I'm not using them. And the other thing I like is there's this little, inbox style 2-tier thing over here. I keep my Remarkable here. Before I got this guy, I would just keep a paper notepad in there. I like having access to pad and paper. If you're on a call, if you're in a meeting, if you have an idea. If I don't keep my notepad in kind of a defined place, I end up, searching everywhere and losing my mind a little bit and not being able to take a note or something when I need to. So taking you on a tour of the rest of the desk, on that file cabinet over there, I have my desktop. This is a custom built desktop that I put together primarily to do video editing. And I used to play more games than I do now. I haven't fired up any of the gaming stuff in quite a while. But I do like having a desktop. It runs Windows 11, lets me do video editing. I do almost all my personal work on there. And then next to that, I have another one of those adjustable aluminum laptop stands. I'll put a link. I forget the brand name. It's some generic Eastern brand, but it holds 2 laptops. It's got some Allen nuts on the bottom so you can adjust the width of the 2 laptop holders. And I have it set up for my MacBook Pro as well as my wife's laptop. And like my setup in my other office, what I love about this one, what I was very intentional about, was next to that laptop stand, I have a USB-C cable. USB-C to me is the greatest invention in desktop cabling or connectivity or whatever you call it in the history of humankind, in that one USB-C cable gives my laptop or any laptop with USB-C power. It connects it to the monitor, connects it to the speakers, webcam, keyboard, mouse, everything. So you've got one cable, you plug it in, and you have access to all this hardware over here. So what's fantastic about that is I can be working away on my MacBook, which I use for work as well as some personal stuff. When I'm done at the end of the day, I can yank out one cable. I can go use the MacBook somewhere else. I can throw it in my briefcase if I'm heading out to travel or to go into the office or something like that. And my wife can pop down at this desk, drop her Dell laptop in, plug in that one single cable, and it's going to charge her laptop. She's got access to all this stuff. Gets on the network, and she doesn't have to log into my desktop. She doesn't have to worry about what application she has. The whole environment's configured and set up for her, and it's as easy as plugging in or removing one cable. When our kids get a little older and they need access to their own laptops, I'm certainly going to buy them something with USB-C so they can drop down a setup like this and again, have everything customized to them. And I don't have to worry about giving them access to my desktop and having some weird Roblox nonsense installed on my machine and potentially jacking it up. Continuing along our tour, I have this little Belkin wireless phone charger thing. It uses that Apple Magic with this little ring, I forget what they call it, mag something or other, that allows it to charge. I also like that it kind of leaves it at eye height for you. So you can see the phone if a little notification blinks up or something like that, or if someone calls, I can look over there very easily, see what's going on. It's got a standard wireless charging pad below that's perfectly sized for AirPods. I know there's Android equivalents. I don't know if they have the fancy magnetic technology, but I do really like having that wireless charging capability. For a long time, I thought those were kind of superfluous, and I had just the generic cable hooked up somewhere so I could plug my phone in when I need to charge. But I'd find that, if somebody calls or, you're getting up or getting down, or I might go sit on the chair to read some emails on my phone, being able to just pick it up and put it down and have the phone stay charged during the day is really beneficial. I found when I was having to plug a cable in and unplug it all the time, I ended up not really charging the phone. This version of the iPhone will generally get through a whole day unless I'm really going wild on making some calls. But sometimes at night I'll forget to charge it or something like that, and being able to just drop it in there, still see the phone, and be able to easily grab my phone and go is very nice. You'll also notice I have a couple of big speakers here. This is another thing I spent way too much time researching. I'll put the links to what I ultimately picked. They sound quite good. And the reason I went with large speakers is twofold. Number one, for the video editing, I think being able to hear a lot of the sound and kind of hear something these are designed to be relatively neutral, so I can hopefully get a reasonable sound edit. Although people always complain about my choice of music and things like that, so maybe I'm smoking it on my ability to edit sound properly. But I also like them for video conferences. For some reason, and you may be in this demographic, but I hate having earphones on when I'm on a video conference, and I actually kind of don't like talking to people when they have earphones on. A lot of people on my team have a big, call center worker headsets with the little microphones that come in, and frankly, I think they look kind of goofy. I feel like I'm talking to someone that's going to reactivate my auto warranty or sign me up for a credit card. So I don't like having anything on my head or my face, and these still allow me to hear people really nicely. And the microphone in my webcam acts as a microphone, so I don't have to have any encumbrances around my face or anything. In terms of keyboard and mouse, I have the Logic Ergo setup. I'll link that down below. Same setup I have out in my other office. If you're going to have 2 workstations set up, and it sounds super bougie, but if you have a large family or you have multiple people in your household that work from home, it is very nice, particularly if you use that USB-C concept and have kind of one cable. I'd highly recommend getting the same keyboard if you can. For a while, I had different keyboards in each office, and when I jump between them, I find myself slow down on typing. I find myself mistyping a lot. If you can go with the same keyboard, I really like this Logitech Ergo keypad setup. It has its own switching mechanism where you can pair it with 3 separate laptops or desktops and hit a button to jump between them. With my Dell monitor setup that I'll talk about in a second, it actually also has its own functionality where you can switch between computers, so that sort of obviates the need to do it on the keyboard, but I do have that capability. Now, jumping into the monitor itself, this is a relatively new Dell 4K monitor. I'll put a link down to the exact one downstairs, but got this for a couple reasons. So I had a Dell ultra wide screen monitor before that was, I think, a little above 1080p. I liked it, it was fine. I'm kind of on the fence. It was one of those ultra wide curved displays versus this is a more traditional 16:9. There's pros and cons to each. What I like about this more traditional 16:9 style display is I can get my speakers up here, I can get my video lights up here, and I have a little bit more desk real estate than I did with that ultra wide. And I also find myself reading a lot of documents, so having a taller monitor versus a super wide one ended up making a lot of sense. What I really like about this Dell is it has that embedded KVM functionality, they call it. I think that stands for keyboard, video, mouse. But it's a fancy way of saying it can switch between being connected to different computers. So my desktop is always connected to the monitor, and the monitor kind of distributes that connection to the webcam, to the keyboard and mouse, all those other peripherals, as well as the speakers. And when I plug something into USB-C, it's also available to be switched between those. So you hit a button on the back, or there's some convoluted keyboard shortcut that I always forget, and it brings up a little menu on the screen's display that lets you switch between desktop and laptop. So it's not super fast. In my other office, having those 2 dual monitors lets me work on 2 machines at once. This, there's a couple or 3 second lag when it kind of switches and everything sort of catches up that it's been connected to a new machine, but it works very well. It's way better than those old-fashioned external switches where you had a big old box with a zillion cables coming out of the back. And it takes a little bit of thought and kind of reading the manual to set it up, since you have to plug certain things into certain ports in the back. And this monitor has, I think, at least a good dozen different USB and other inputs and outputs. So it takes a little while to set it up, but once it's set up, it is quite seamless. It works really well, and it's quite neat in that it figures out which machine's connected. So if at the beginning of the day, I shake the mouse and my MacBook's connected, my Mac will pop up on the screen. If the beginning of the day, my Mac is asleep and I turn on my desktop, it'll figure out, hey, the desktop's going. It'll automatically switch everything over. So it's quite convenient, works really well, and it also has 90-watt power delivery, so it'll charge the newer Macs. Some of the older monitors with that KVM functionality deliver a limited amount of power to your laptop. So try and figure out what power input you need for your particular laptop, and then what kind of power the monitor will deliver. The shortcut for that is to go and type the monitor model number that you're looking at, and then your laptop model number, and invariably someone somewhere on the internet will have said, hey, this works great, or hey, this doesn't deliver enough power, it's terrible. I also have these two Elgato video lights. I believe they're the Keylight Air. Neck deep in the pandemic, when everyone was doing everything from home and video conferencing was life. The company I was working for at the time, everyone's sort of gotten this weird arms race to see who could have the best quality video coming out of your house. And as a typical bandwagon follower, I kind of got into that too. And I got these video lights, and I frankly don't use them as much anymore as I used to, for a couple of reasons. First of all, you can't really fix ugly. I mean, you can light up this mug as much as you want, and it's still gonna look about like this. Secondly, I found I was getting a lot of eye fatigue. I would tweak them, and you'd have to get the brightness and color balance and all this stuff just right, since I'm in a room with two big windows. There's a lot of ambient light. You're backlit because there's house lights behind you and all this other stuff. In a conference call that was more, or in a video conference that was more than about 60 minutes, my eyes would just get tired because you got these two big bright lights sort of beaming right into your brain. The additional quality I'd see on the video versus the eye fatigue just wasn't worth it. I also have an older Logitech webcam on here that I think is 1080p on a good day. So my video is a little grainy. It's not perfect anyway. Thought about going down the road of getting a 4K webcam and trying out my game there, but it all comes down to the fact that I am what I am, and this mug's not getting much better looking, no matter how many lights or how many 4Ks you throw at it. Other than that, I got a couple 3D printed knickknacks on my desk. If you have a 3D printer, there's lots of cool stuff you can print out there. Not to turn this into a 3D printing discussion, but I got a Prusa 3D printer, which you can buy as a kit, and it was a lot of fun for my son and I to put together. So if you're looking for a fun family project, shout out to those guys. I printed out this little, office junk caddy. It was kind of a fun thing. I found it on Thingiverse. You got a little spot for your pens. You got a spot for Post-its, which is pretty common, but I liked there's also a little spot for USB sticks. So I got a USB stick. I got a card reader. You can drop some cards in there. So after I make some YouTube video, I'll drop a card in there and know that it's something I've got to suck in and do something with, which is kind of nice. I also, like my outside office, have a little caffeine molecule coaster for my coffee, which is fine. And then there's some website, I can't remember the address, but you can probably find it by Google, that lets you print topographical maps in 3D. This is a hike I did up in New Hampshire a number of years ago, the Presidential Traverse, and printed out the ridgeline there. So just something cool. I'm looking for inspiration or whatnot. And again, a neat way to get some little customized personal tweaks that you can throw on your desk and make it your own. Final thing I'll mention, which I also mentioned in the other video, but is worth talking about, is a chair. And I'm going to mention it in particular because I've kind of been locked out of my other office since the HVAC broke. It's been a record heat wave the last couple of weeks, so it's like 1.7 billion degrees up there. I had an old chair kicking around in the house here that I think I picked up at Staples. It was one of those on sale specials for like $100 or something. And it had all kinds of superlatives. It was supposed to be an ergonomic, micro foam, temper, whatever kind of deal. And it's been frankly terrible. I sat in that thing for about 2 weeks and my back was feeling awful. I was getting to a point where I'd have to get out of the chair every half an hour, walk around a little bit. I was doing cat cows to try and stretch things out. And it sounded like I had styrofoam peanuts in my spinal column because it was creaking and cracking and groaning and all that stuff. So I brought my legit chair from the other office out here. This is a Herman Miller Embody, I believe. I'll put a link with the name and everything because I can't remember it off the top of my head. And it almost not quite an instant cure, but it was, instantly felt better the second I sat in it. And it's been about a week since I brought it out, and it's already causing my back to feel much better. So I said it in my last video, I'm going to say it again, don't skimp on your office chair. Ideally find an office supply type place near you. I think every major and minor city has some sort of warehouse, and hopefully it's somewhere you can go and sit in a couple dozen different chairs and try things out. Get something from a real office company, Herman Miller, a steel case, one of those companies. Don't get some jazzy gamer chair or something. Your back's going to thank you. Your body's going to thank you. You're going to feel more productive. When you're sitting there trying to do something and your back's hurting, it makes you a lot less effective. Frankly, this and the desk are the two things that are going to change the least out of this setup. I think this chair was more than $1,000, which sounds super bougie. It sounds frankly ridiculous to me that I spent that much on a chair, but this thing's going to last me 10, 15 years. My laptop's going to last me 5 to 7 if I'm lucky. Desktop, I probably upgrade every 5 years or so. This is something that's going to be with you for a while, and it's something that's going to cause a significant benefit to your health and your productivity, and just make it more enjoyable to sit down and work from your home office. So if you're going from, maybe not working remotely to working more remotely and spending more time in your home office, get yourself a good chair. Having worked for a couple large companies, some of them will offer you subsidies, some of them will pay for that sort of thing. Sometimes you can get a doctor's note and use that to use your HSA for a better chair. But even if none of that applies, it's a worthwhile upgrade and something to definitely think about before you go splashing tons of cash on, all the fancy gadgets. So for all my people out there that are working hard, trying to go for theirs, sometimes having the man give them a pat on the back and an attaboy, and sometimes having the man give them a swift kick in the pants, hopefully this helped you. As I did in my last video, I will say, take all of this as inspiration and as maybe some paths to investigate. Don't take this as gospel. I'm going to put everything downstairs and links and all that stuff, but I would hate for you to just go and buy everything here and then throw it on your own desk and say, really hate this monitor. These speakers were stupid. Why did I buy this? Why did I buy that? So what I would suggest is, number one, think through what you're trying to accomplish. Are you somebody that is writing a lot and posture and keyboard are super important? Are you a graphic designer, or maybe your monitor is super important and maybe you need some room for a tablet or whatnot? Try and think through what you actually need. And I would try and focus on little upgrades over time versus trying to buy everything all at once. Start small, start bit by bit, try and focus on kind of your immediate problems, upgrade gradually. You'll end up with a pretty good setup that works for you. Hopefully this gives you some ideas, some inspiration, maybe some things that you haven't seen and stuff to think about. And keep on rocking in the free world. Keep on getting it done. And to all my people out there working for a living, this is the Big Heavy saying peace and wishing you well. Ever wonder why every talking head on YouTube asks you to hit the like and subscribe button at the end of their video? You were right, because we're living in a computer simulation. And our benevolent robotic overlords get just a little bit of energy every time you hit that like. So do me, the rest of civilization, and our benevolent robotic overlords a favor. Mash that subscribe, be kind to each other, keep living your simulated dreams.